Chad Peterman here, and you are listening to Can't Stop the Growth, a platform for leaders and teams to grow and thrive. We highlight the importance of personal development, pursuing greatness, and always chasing your potential. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Can't Stop the Growth. I'm your host, Chad Peterman, and today we are going to talk about a topic that I'm sure everyone is thinking about, but is everyone doing something about it? We're all looking for, especially in the trades, new technicians and, qualified people and people to add to our team so that we can continue to grow our companies. But it doesn't stop there with recruiting. Finding a person is only the first step. There is a huge process and a lot of value that can be added when we really hone in on the entire recruitment and retention process across our companies. And so I'm very excited today to bring on Stephen Rhyne, the founder and CEO of Convey Your. Welcome to the podcast, Stephen.
Thanks for having me, Chad.
Yeah, excited to talk about this topic. As we talked prior to the show, I did a little bit of research, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect as far as a topic, because it's something we've really leaned into, and really excited to hear kind of your thoughts around the topic and different things like that. I guess maybe to start off, just to give kind of listeners kind of a point of reference, maybe give us a little bit of your background, your story, and then maybe a little bit of what you guys aim to do at Convey Your.
Yeah, so my background is in Cutco Cutlery. That's where I started right after college, and was with that company for about 5 years, as a direct sales Cutco salesman, and hit the Hall of Fame there. Really enjoyed that, but I was always the one that was kind of tinkering with the sales process, kind of like nerding out on the CRMs and the software and stuff. So I got into software and actually built their first sales rep relationship manager, the tool that they still use today for the managers to manage all their direct sales, 1099 based, salespeople. And that really started my 20-year journey in direct sales software and helping with onboarding and recruiting and training and management of field reps.
Awesome. And then tell us a little bit about Convey Your. What are you guys doing there? What's this about? Because I think that'll probably be kind of the topic of our conversation, even though I do want to get into the Cutco story, because everyone, you come around and it's like, okay, like these really successful people, they all started at Cutco selling knives door to door. It's like, is that even a thing? So I definitely want to ask you some questions about that, but tell us a little bit about Convey Your and what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, so we help companies that need to build large independent, sales forces or technician, outside field sales technician forces. We help them grow their team using, through recruiting, onboarding, training, and retention techniques. And so our platform, if for people to understand the category, we are an applicant tracking system, the full onboarding automation, kind of HRIS stuff. The full microlearning training, mobile-based training platform, and a texting platform, kind of all rolled together specifically for the services industry. And we do a lot of business with smart home, solar, pest, roofing, HVAC, all these companies that are really neat. They the kind of make or break is having a really good offer and good service, but also growing that team to deliver that service. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I guess maybe just kind of a starter question here. So you approach a client or a client approaches you. What do you see typically as to the issue or not issues, maybe just the hurdles that your software can help overcome? Like, what are businesses out there struggling with? I'm sure there's listeners out there like, well, shoot, are we struggling with this? I mean, we find people and they're here, but we're not measuring our retention and different things like that. I feel like sometimes the data is not there to really kind of influence what is going wrong and what can we fix. What do you typically see out there with a client that's not using your software but is interested in, hey, these are the things that we can solve for you?
Yeah, so major mistakes I see is they especially in the area, there's a lot of organizational complexity in direct sales, because sometimes it's franchise based, it's regional or partner or divisional based, right? It's not like a lot of companies where there's a uniformity in practice, right? There's a lot of different things going on, and so first thing I see is systems just can be kind of pushed off down, like to a regional or divisional, to implement, and they are really losing out on like the efficiencies. And so we see so much like PE money coming in and just doing roll-ups and improving the efficiency overall. And I just want to do that for the company that's already that doesn't want to sell the PE firm, right? Like they want to grow a great business and they want to create a more uniform experience. So I'll give you examples. So one is like the onboarding experience. So they want to recruit more, but yet their onboarding is done wildly differently in one state versus another, or they don't actually have it documented. And so the onboarding experience becomes like this pain point where either a state or an office doesn't want to grow into pain. So they actually don't want more recruits, or they say they want more recruits in the funnel, but it actually would be like, hey, stop the presses. We got to get these people onboarded first before we can say, yes, bring me more. Right. And so an example is we try to take that, like legs feed the beast, you gotta get really, really dialed in onboarding so that recruiting feels a lot like less of a lift.
Yeah.
And so we help with onboarding. Then problem I see is that they're still doing recruiting in a way that's more of like a W-2 style recruiting process, which is when I see what I mean by that is a typical HRIS process where they get a bunch of Indeed ads or Indeed prospects. They kind of sift through the resumes. They pick out a few that look good. They do a screening, and they're not really building kind of like a marketing engine for their business. They're not building a funnel. They're just building, or like what I call an hourglass, model where they're attracting talent. They're attracting people that could be doing anything else. They're not looking for a job. They're quality talent, and you have a wide funnel, and then you're selling them and positioning your opportunity for a lot of people, and then you're systematically weeding out people that wouldn't fit your culture, and then doing all of the what I call like the iceberg work, which is all of the nuts and bolts of like reminding them about their interview, making sure they show up, efficiently asking whether the manager wants to keep them or not, right? Alerting that person, like all of that stuff that makes it really hard to scale the recruiting. So this is just a couple of mistakes I see.
Yeah, no, I think those are things that, we've at one time, well, we're probably experiencing some of them right now. But, some of them that we've addressed is I think the most key and what I always tell people when it's recruiting, because they're like, how did you find all these people? How did you add all these people? Because we're recruiting skilled labor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough to find, right? You got to find someone who fits culturally, but also has a skill set that is I can't teach someone how to, work on a furnace overnight. It takes time and experience and all of that stuff. Tell us a little bit about maybe just your take on, I'm a huge proponent of onboarding. Like once the person walks in the door, like recruiting is almost just begun. Like we sold them in the interview. They took the
100%.
opportunity. They took the leap of faith. Now they're here. Now we got to continue to sell.
Dude,
what are your thoughts on that?
Chad, you nailed it. I'm so glad you know this, obviously from the level that you've grown your business. It is as companies grow, it's like each division in the company. I'll just explain the problem a little bit more. It's like each division of the company grows separately. So like the recruiting arm does their thing and they pass off a recruit, and then the onboarding HR people, and then the training people, and they optimize for their specific department. You know what I mean? So like a recruit, like, hey, we did our job. We got them, to the offer letter in the recruiting. Then onboarding is like assuming this person's actually bought in when they're not. They might be looking at two other opportunities, especially if they're 1099 based. They might, be excited the first week and then think like the onboarding is a little kludgy, or they're not getting a lot of support and they're already looking at other things. That's the day and age we were in, right? And so what you just said about the sales starts again after the offer and after they say yes, it's so true. And so I think, like I always argue about training, what context container, what container could you put this person in early and set the context and set the expectations and set the culture early in the form of great video content, great drip, great systems, so that they would be so jazzed that even before they even showed up for physical training, they were like on YouTube, like trying to learn how to do the job, right? Like that's what's missing in training, honestly. And so what we try to tell people is to think about it as a rep experience funnel, rep experience platform. And, how much can you get this person in the right mindset before they even start the job or start training to keep them bought in? And I think this is so important because, people silently like nope out of the process and silently quit out of the process, even if they're just like waiting to see what happens versus being totally bought in.
Yeah, I think that's to me, it's like recruiting, I feel like sometimes gets this like the mentality that we're just going to receive anybody that comes in. Like
Yeah.
it's just very passive. Like let's just see who's interested. And to me, like I've always come from, back when we were small, I was recruiting every morning. I'm reaching out to people, I'm texting them, I'm calling them, I'm doing whatever I can because at the end of the day, like I think sometimes as a company, you can sit there and be like, well, yeah, this is a great place to work. Everyone should want to work here. Well, if they've never worked here, they don't know that. So like you've got to go out of your way to show them that like, hey, we really care. This is a great place. It's a great opportunity, all of that stuff. Like, how do you guys, does your software help with like kind of hopefully transforming that mentality of recruiting of we're not just going to sit here on our hands and wait for something to show up. We're going to go hunt people down.
Yes. So for order taking, like I just always translate to sales, right? So order taking off your website from a referral, that's kind of what I think of like Indeed recruiting, which is just like, that's just like order taking. You're just weeding through the people that are just like, I don't have any other option. Our best customers actually spend a lot, they've transitioned out of using like an Indeed and ZipRecruiter and spend more with they make it stupid easy for their reps to sneeze the potential role, the opportunity to other people. And so they give them a private URL, like a link, a QR code that every recruit can scan, okay, or every potential person can scan. It instantly associates who referred them, to them. And this is not order taking like, oh, you're ready to start the job. This is, you want to learn more. I got to go to the next door. I got to go to the next, appointment, but hey, you should really check out our company. That kicks off a nurturing sequence. So they get a text, the prospect gets a text. It starts positioning the opportunity. It starts asking them questions about what they're looking for. It really gets them excited, sells them on the potential opportunity, and then qualifies them. Not the other way around. Because like HR is so, we're awesome, we're going to qualify you first. Instead, with opportunity based, you have to sell some, like this. I'm preaching to the choir, but you have to sell first with the people that are like high quality. You cannot start with like, what do you fit the requirements? So, get them through, get them interested, get them hooked, then start qualifying and nurturing them, and then get them scheduled for, like a screening or an interview. And our whole process does that. So it's more like the best way to describe it was like, we've all been to like landing pages from Instagram or something. But imagine a landing page from Instagram that also like nudges you with a text message or an email, saying, hey, let's get you back onto this landing page to learn more. And it's morphing and changing as you go further through the process.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that that's great advice for any listeners out there that are like, well, I can't find, we hear this all the time in the trades. I can't find any good people. I'm like, yeah, they're not going to just come knock on your door. Like in the trades, the crazy part is if someone doesn't like where they work currently, they can go find another job. And what we find is too, if you're trying to create something like a little bit different, like we are, sometimes guys are stuck at a company and they think that's the norm. They're like, well, why would I switch a company? It kind of sucks here anyway. I guess it's just going to suck everywhere. And so I think it just speaks to that, how important it is to sell how are you different? Why is this a good opportunity that someone should look at? I think too is sometimes like, well, why wouldn't they just come over here? It's like, that is like kind of a big life decision. Like, if they got family and stuff like that, I mean, like this is a big thing.
It's like it's a bigger sale than a sale. I mean, like, I don't think
100%.
recruiters totally understand like the opportunity, like they're paying with their opportunity costs. And that whole assumption of we are the limited resource and all these people are clamoring for it. Yeah, maybe a small percentage of people are clamoring for your limited resources if you want to position it that way. But those aren't the people you're trying to recruit. The people you're trying to recruit are the ones who have like abundant opportunity, you know, and you got to position it better. And I think the people that are intentional about their life and are, rock stars are going to pick up on your intentionality really quickly. So like when they see, like Chad, I've watched a few of your videos, like when I watched a video you're talking about like actually caring about the people that, you have working with you, right? Like letting them don't do their job for them, it's when I hear a leader talking like that in a video that attracts the right type of people. It's like that shotgun test in a bar, like if, you hear the sound, what that sound is, you turn around. Um, and that's the type of thing you're trying to signal to the right types of recruits is, this is different. Like this is what you're looking for. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we kind of touched on the recruiting piece, the onboarding piece, because I said earlier, I think it's the most important. Like, what are some key things that listeners could take away of like, hey, here's some things to do, here's some things not to do when it comes to onboarding?
Yeah. What to do? Well, I would say automate, and people are gonna like. Some people cringe when I say this. Automate as much of the onboarding process as possible. So that is, collect all of their information first. Get the e-sign done automatically if you can, embedded within the portal. Kick off the process of getting them into the other systems automatically. What not to do is have someone that just shoots out all of that stuff to all at once. Kind of throwing all of these things into their inbox, all of these text messages, overwhelming them with a non-linear process. Okay. And so, let me back up a little bit. The onboarding process should be this highly, in my opinion, should be this highly automated linear process. Like there's only one next step, for the rep at any moment. It feels like you actually thought it through. It's clean, it's fast, and you go through it. Like I shouldn't be added to your canvassing tool or your CRM until I get an introduction, a quick little introduction of what it's for and what your expectation about it is in the first week or two. Then you're going to say, hey, you're going to get an email with a subject line of this in a moment. Great. Think like you just added to the CRM and then they get an email, right? And so I was just having a conversation where people concerned about worrying about automation in the onboarding process, like they're going to lose out on the relationship. And I'm like, that's limited thinking. Like think about all the time that you get to buy back to spend time having a 10-15 minute conversation with a new person about who they are, because you're not spending a bunch of time doing onboarding, like physical onboarding stuff. And so I think people always underestimate how much automation actually gives them time back to make a more personal, better experience for the rep.
Yeah, absolutely. We created like it's a manual. So we onboard every other Monday. For the most part, there's, a rare instance where someone goes off cycle. But typically it's, hey, this is the day that we start, and onboarding is a full day where everyone comes in and we go through it step by step. And it's the same process every single Monday. So everybody has the same information that they need to be successful. And then two, I think it's about coordinating all the other departments. So we want to make sure they get their technology on day one. We want to make sure if they get a vehicle, it may not be day one, but it's really close and it's all scheduled and their vehicle's ready and they're aware and they can make arrangements to get there and all of that stuff, which I think is huge. And I think too, it just speaks to who you are going to be as a company. Are you organized? Do you have all your stuff together, or is this a complete cluster?
They're reading so much into that process. I think people are really reading into the process, and as tenure goes down and down and down, unfortunately, how fast you can onboard someone into your company matters so much. It is like the interface to somebody taking on your opportunity. So,
yeah. I guess as it relates to onboarding, and I know you guys do some training and different stuff
Mhm.
like that. How important have you seen that become, especially to your comment just a second ago about, the generation that's coming up that, call it the 24 to 30,
Mhm.
they think a little bit differently. And I always say, a lot of these people come in and they want to take my job on day two. And
Nice.
I'm like, hell, I love the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
But what we found is giving them a career path of like, all right, hey, you're in your role. Now, if you do this really well, and here's your KPIs, here's your metrics, you do this, then you move up, then you move up, then you move
Yeah.
up, then you move up. And I think so often we don't give people like a roadmap and the training that they need to get to that next step. What have you guys seen with kind of the trainings that you've created, and maybe give a little bit of background on what that looks like for people?
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of programs like a 30 days to pro, you know what I mean, for a role, or other kind of like drip experiences like that. What I always say about training is training and onboarding, especially with the younger generation. Um, if you just spend um, a, a little bit of time up front in the onboarding, like a welcome video, for example, in the onboarding, and a welcome to the training, and you do exactly that, which is explain what this is going to be. Like there's no dark corners of the room. Like you just explain, this is what's going to happen. Calm down. This is what we're going to do. Like you're in a good place. We're going to go through this whole process of training. Like explain it rather than just assuming that they're bought in. Okay.
Yep.
Spend a few minutes on that, then go into, so like a lot of people just go right into like these big, thick, long videos about what the job is all about and what they're going to do. Start with, this is the map. This is the Mario level map, okay, of
Yep.
Super Mario World that you're going to go through. Explain that, then you can go into the videos, and that really just like lets people sit down and is like sit into their chair and be like, okay, I'm here. That makes sense to me now. The other thing I say, like I think a lot of our customers get a little overwhelmed with what to give reps first, okay, and we work with a lot of entry level salespeople that knock doors, right? So that's a big space for us. Maybe not so much like a technician that's got like, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
we always say, try to make it like a game. So give the rep just the training that they like, give them that full, view, but then just give them exactly what they need to get to the next aha moment. So if you were to lay out like a life cycle of a rep and say, what would be something that would retain a rep? What's something that they could accomplish in the first week, in the first month, that if they accomplish this, it's like way higher likelihood that they stay with our company. Okay.
Yeah.
And software companies do this all the time. Like we do this. We have like metrics that we want our reps to hit, our customers to hit a certain point. And that's what I say, like build training around that. Make the whole experience around that. And that might not be a lot of training. That might just be belief building.
Yep.
Um, and I'll give you an example of one where it's not even training, but it's more of a recruit onboard belief building exercise. There was a tier one car manufacturer, parts manufacturer, that had really high turnover on day two on the line. And it was because people would either be sore, like their forearms would be sore, and they weren't used to the physical labor, or they felt really nervous that they were holding up the line, like their anxiousness was really high. So what they did is they went around and just did selfie videos with people that had just finished their last week and was just like, hey, tell us about your first week. And they just brought up those objections. Yeah, man, my first day, I was so sore and I was really worried about holding up the line. And I thought people were going to get angry at me. But actually they were all cool. They totally understand. They were in the same situation. And the soreness went away the next day, like, or 2 days later. And I never got sore again.
Yeah.
How simple is that video, right? Not high produced. And then they just put that in the onboarding process. They put that going out like as soon as the offer letter went out. And so it's, if you just design training around the goals of the business versus thinking about it like a college, syllabus exercise, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And just wrap it around like, where does this rep have to be in a week? What do they need to know? And just work backwards, right? Great. Let's just get that to them first. Because what you don't give a rep is just as important as what you give them.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I wrote that down because I think that's something that we could do is, you know, a lot of our technicians probably come from smaller companies.
Mm-hmm.
And inherently with a larger company, there's more process and procedure and more like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? How do I do that? What am I going to do? And to me, like a video, giving it to somebody because they're, switching jobs, there's a lot of anxiety. Like, did I make the right choice?
Mm-hmm.
How is this going to suck? What am I going to do? To me, like, yeah, giving those videos of like, hey, here, it seems like a lot, but trust me, there's people here to help. And it's really not that difficult once you get going and it all makes sense. Or, hey, this was really difficult, but, I think they're working to improve it, whatever it may be. I think that that's a really, really cool tip as far
Yeah.
as kind of that recruiting onboarding kind of handoff.
Mm-hmm. The other way to say it about training is the early on, it's like it's really about designing a program that's what they don't know.
Yep.
So this is really about spoon feeding information that they're completely not on their radar. They don't understand. And then there's once they get a little bit more into experience and they have like what they know they don't know. And that's a different type of content. So
Yeah.
that's more of a, repository of a location where they can go and grab information. And we have a system for that. Or you should have like your lesson folder, so to speak,
Yeah.
not your campaigns that are specifically designed for a certain purpose. And then there's AI. And so, I suggest anyone, can we build our own little LLM, our own little searching tool to answer questions about our company through natural language. And so, we'll be releasing that here very soon, but we take all the content you already have in the portal and make it where you can just answer any person, any technician can get an answer anytime just by talking to the content that you've given them.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. AI is it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's already here.
Yes.
We're using it in a bunch of different places. And I think the thing about AI that I think is so interesting is, it just can move so fast. Like we've
Mm-hmm.
seen things move fast, right? You got the first iPhone, it could do some stuff. Now it can
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of stuff, but that took, 10 years to like kind of bake out where AI is moving at a
It's like new
aggressive
internet level.
pace.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nuts, which is
Yeah.
interesting. But I think it's also interesting. Again, hey, creating, you can train an AI agent, just dump in all the questions that people have
Yes.
and
Yeah.
provide an answer. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden you've got it. So,
I think that's where some of the younger generations like intrepid nature comes from.
mm-hmm.
Um, is that they don't assume they have to pack up before they start.
Yeah.
So like imagine like it's the same thing with Google. Like pre-Google, I couldn't just Google it on my phone walking, to the next door or between appointments, right? I couldn't just pull it up as a full text search of a PDF on a file. I had to know it. I had to just study it, know it, pack it up. And so there was a perception in older generations that, well, hold your horses. You got to learn all that stuff first before you can go out and do it. And the newer generations just assume that they're going to be holding the hand of an AI or holding the hand of, something else that's going to allow them to kind of be like bionic in some ways to do their role. Now there's the wisdom that they need to learn, right? And the experience that they don't have. But as far as being able to get to information, that's not a fear of a younger generation.
You'd mentioned earlier on kind of, Indeed recruiting is kind of a thing of the past. We still run Indeed ads.
Mm-hmm.
We still get people that apply. To me,
Yeah.
it can't be your only channel, but it can be a channel. I mean, we still get good people off of it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
what are you seeing out there that seems to be working, especially as you kind of were recruiting kind of, people who are going out in front of people and all of that stuff? Like are there anything that, maybe people aren't thinking of that seems to
Mm-hmm.
be attracting talent?
Yeah. So I'll just say, like, no doubt. I mean, we still have tons of customers getting thousands of Indeed applicants a month. It's just they know for sure that the context, if you can really invest in like a social recruiting campaign, like reps recruiting other reps, making that stupid easy, building a leaderboard around it, rewarding people and incentivizing people to bring in the context, like a bringing in like one quality person bringing in another quality. It's just completely different, in terms of like Vector, Cutco, most of their recruits are personal recruits, like most of
Yeah.
them. And so what I mean by concept, it's like I always tell the story about the violinist who charged like $600 a ticket in New York. Okay, he's like the best violinist in the world, and then he goes and what do they call it? Busking, in the subway, and no one will even throw a dime, into his little violin case, right?
Yeah.
It's just like context matters so much, and so that's why I say it's invest, because the volume is going to be lower, but the quality is going to be so much higher, and the context is going to be so much better. And I'm
Yeah.
not just talking about quality of the person. I'm talking about the quality of the context and the person combined. Okay, because they're also saying yes to their friend, right? There's some
Yeah.
social capital and that they're exchanging to do that. And so building out that program and having like an automated system for doing that and tracking who did it, really important. The other one is you can give that to your customers. So your customers can also be recruited too. Right. And they also know people in their family too. So that's another source. Social media, I've seen some really good just like internal marketing content where they make another Instagram channel. And it's just like, here's how we operate as a solar company, and they make, memes and funny stuff, and they give it to the young guys to do the social channel. And it really makes you want to work there. It really does. And then they're like, hey, click on this link to get started or learn more, scan this QR code. So social media recruiting is a big deal. And then there are agencies out there that will go out and hunt down, for sales guys and stuff, like hunt down like college men and women that maybe excelled well in sports, or, have like did Cutco or did DECA or something like that, right? And they do, harpoon based recruiting, right? Like hunting for these people and then getting them interested on social and then sharing them a link to get them into the process. So those are different ways people are doing it.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. It's, you can only put so much out on an Indeed ad to attract somebody, and they all
Yeah.
kind of look the same.
Right.
So how can you separate yourself from the pack? We've seen some success, not a ton, but like we've gotten applicants. It's just, are they qualified or not? Just running very lightly produced video that
Mm-hmm.
just says, hey, we're looking for the best. Do you want to join our team?
Yeah.
Click the link below to learn more. I think we could build that out a little bit more. And try to do some different things, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
What do you mentioned this whole concept of giving your employees kind of a unique link to go recruit.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because I think that's something that people could deploy
Right.
like tomorrow.
Yeah. Really quick. I mean, you could build this. You don't need conveyor to do it, but it would be cool if you did. But all it matters is giving each person that badged up in your company a link to like a landing page.
Yep.
And that link might have, I'll get a little nerdy here, like a parameter or hidden field on it that represents the employee ID of the other person. Okay. And then you send that out as a text message or an email to every single person, like, save this link. They join you can share that out to any prospect. When they share it out and somebody fills that out, maybe that's like, a drip email system or a texting tool or a jot form or something like that. That kicks off a sequence that reaches out to that person. You drop the name of the person that referred them. So that's really cool. Like, hey, I know that, Chad was, thought you'd be really great for potentially great at our company. Here's what Chad wanted to show you, right? Click this link. Another one is group, like people sometimes have texting tools where they do like a 3-way text, right? To get them going on that. So then you drip, it's all about assuming this person has no interest and positioning the role. So you're sending out text messages or emails to that person. You're asking them questions. You're getting them back in to watch a video. Then if they don't watch the video, you're nudging them again politely, like, hey, I know Chad really felt like this would be, great opportunity for you. Could you watch this couple minute video? If not, no sweat. Just reply back no. Then they watch the video. Then you ask a few questions that they're looking for. Then you qualify them. And then you're like, what are you looking for in a role? Sometimes it's even just listening to somebody by asking them questions about what they care about. Okay. And the very act of asking them makes them see, not, I'm trying to be disingenuous or anything, but makes them see that you're interested in actually what they're looking for. Okay. And even if you're not using that in the flow, then you're immediately showing them, a schedule, like embedded schedule from Calendly or Cal to book. And we've done this where we have 40 different locations for different offices, where we dynamically inject the right calendar depending on the office that the other employee's in, right? Or their location. Then we nudge them if they don't schedule, and just on and on and on, and just build out that funnel. And so the devil's in the details, but when you get those conversions each way, like, it matters.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I think it just gives, context for people who are wanting to find more people, more qualified people, and all of this stuff. Like, gone are the days of just sitting there. And I think we've kind of made that very apparent in our conversation here. But like, you've got to think outside the box. Like, how are we going to find these people? How are we going to do all of this stuff? Like, to me, I think that is just so important for listeners to understand when it comes to recruiting and finding top talent for their company.
Like a challenge I'd put to anybody doing recruiting is just add up the costs and see if you can get a cost per recruit, just like we all do for, cost per acquisition on a customer. Like, can you do that for your recruiting? Most people aren't doing, they just see it as a cost center. They don't understand cost per recruit, or cost to onboard. But if you did some of those numbers and you're like, whoa, it is 30% of the LTV of this sales rep or something like that, like really high, we can say, well, what if you could incentivize your own people with that cash? Like, what if you could just take that cash, get better quality recruits, get your team more involved, and take a percent and save money? I think you can do it all. So.
Yeah, the great thing about the ROI on finding a good candidate is they're worth far more than an individual customer, depending on what you're selling. But in most cases, they're far more lucrative than finding another new customer.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just taking into a ridiculous, like if you have a really high churns, sales environment or something, and like the lifetime value is low, I'm just saying even then it makes sense to figure out the cost per recruit. So
yeah, absolutely. Do you guys, I know one thing we've played around with and really haven't landed on anything, but just wanted to get your 2 cents on it. Do you guys use any sort of, or would you recommend any sort of, personality test, or, there's tons of stuff out there as far as like on the recruitment side? I guess we're kind of going back to the beginning here. You find a qualified candidate, you do the interview. Sometimes you can only get so much, if they're a good salesperson, they should interview pretty darn well. But what are all the other things? And do you what kind of level do you guys go to, or would you recommend
cool.
there?
Like, I've done them all, done like a DISC and Enneagram, and one that Vector uses a lot was CBI. I don't know if you've ever heard of CBI before. We haven't done a whole lot of the personality tests. We have done a lot of like video interviews. So we have a way for uploading a video of a prospect and prompting them with certain questions and then reviewing those. But we haven't linked into any, person. Have you had any success with any personality tools?
Not really. I think that, the key is landing on one, and then what are you going to take from that? DISC has been a part of the organization, but that's not really, to me, DISC isn't something you make a hiring decision on. That's more like how you communicate, and everybody communicates a little bit differently. To me, that doesn't dictate success or failure in a role.
Right. Yeah.
But there are other things, I think like strength finders and different things like that I can think of that, do a better job of like, how would you handle this situation? How are you wired? Different things like that. So we haven't
built
a few
on the platform because we can do scoring and points and stuff like that. So we have built a couple like assessments for some companies where we bury the point number, like the rep can't see the points and then they're answering questions. So you can build personality tests on our, micro learning platform. But I've never used any of the, that's interesting. I want to take a look at that.
Yeah.
um, the one thing I'd say, like on the flip side of personality is, um, I maybe this is a not well received opinion, but my opinion is that a lot of assessments, take home work, like recruiting like all that stuff is somewhat of like an arms race towards uh, avoiding the cost of onboarding and training. So if you pay down the debt and the technical debt and all that stuff, and you get more streamlined with onboarding and training, and you make better tools for your managers to manage those people, then the onus of recruiting goes down, because you can bring somebody in. This is our vision, like it or not. Like this is our culture. And if they don't work out, they don't work out. But you have such an efficient core. I'd love to hear what your opinion is on that. Like, let's say you have a really, really efficient onboarding process and training process, so efficient that you can lower the bar in terms of like who you bring in to potentially do the role. What are the downsides, to that model versus having a really high bar in terms of who you initially recruit?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. From my perspective, it is how do we lower the bar? Because, in our world, I've got to find somebody who, in most cases, now we train people, we've got a class of 10 right now that, know nothing about the trades, and we're going to train them over the next 8 weeks to be technicians. That's great. But that is a very slow and methodical way to, bring talent into your team. And so when we think about finding technicians who, have the technical aptitude, obviously we want to make sure that they're a fit for the culture. But my feeling is that we want to lower the bar to get them in here, because we do have something that's so different. Now, it's two-sided, right? We can believe that all we want every day and think that we're the greatest thing since sliced bread, but it's all in the actions. And so what we really work hard on is with our managers is, hey, you brought this guy in, you liked him when you interviewed him. Now, what I'm not going to accept is 60 days later, you're like, he's terrible. Worst guy ever. Not going to have him. Like, no. Your job is to continue selling him. If he's struggling, then get with him and help him. And so we talk a lot about, servant leadership it's your job to lift that person up. Yeah, we're not going to be able to find like the most perfect technician and add them all to our team. Like, we're going to have all different varying levels of success and different things like that. But guess what? We need people. We're in the people business. And so it's our job to develop them as well. So here's his base. Okay, now we're going to take him to the next level. And so I think it's, it goes past kind of the onboarding and all of that. Like, you've got to, if you're going to lower the bar, you've got to have a really good system that's going to take you from day 30 to year 5. Like, how are we going to keep this person engaged? How are we going to make sure that they're continuing to see more and more success? How are they continuing to move forward? And I think
Can I ask you this, like, how
Yeah.
do you scale management? So that's one area where we want to play in, we want to help with systemizing, not just the one-on like system to like company and system to rep, or company and system to technician, but company and system to manager, to help give the manager superpowers to help that person. So like, how do
Yeah.
you think about that? How do you put checks and balances or cadences into, hey manager, have you checked in with this person? And here's a guide on how to have a one-on-one with this person. Or like, how do you do that?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, it's making sure that they have the available data that they need to identify someone who's struggling. As these departments get bigger, you got a lot of people running around and you don't see them every day. And so, like, how do I get a purview into their performance and where they're struggling? Like, how can I pinpoint that? I think the next step is we are huge believers in one-on-ones. To me, that is where the rubber meets the road. That is where we're going to drive performance. It's not going to be through a weekly meeting. It's not going to be through a text message. It's going to be sitting down and leveling with that person so that they know, and I tell all my managers this, each person that you manage needs to know that you want them to be successful as much, or in some cases, maybe even more than they do. And so how do you convey that? Well, you convey that by sitting across from somebody and saying, hey man, I'm here for your success. Like, what are you struggling on? How can I help you? Like, what are we going to do? Like you did this much yesterday. How can we do more tomorrow? Like, what's that look like? How can I help you? And so I think when it comes to your question about scaling management, I think it is just all about consistency. I'm a huge believer that if you're going to build a culture that is supportive and, encourages growth and all of that, it's got to be consistent. It can't be, a once a month meeting where we just talk about this and that. It's got to be every single
It's
day.
a skill, like a regimented skill.
You got it. And it's
Yeah.
just got to be ingrained in the culture of we will not settle for every person on our team not getting a little bit better today. And we're going to do everything humanly possible to make sure that that happens. And for me, it's just, it doesn't happen immediately. You're going to be like, okay, so, one of the things we did is we kind of call it our foundation is we have leadership training every Tuesday from 8:30 to 9. It's 30 minutes. We're talking about a topic. We're just boom, boom, boom. I mean, it sounds bad, but it's kind of like beating people over the head with it. Like, no, this is the way that we are going to
remind them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because we all forget. We've all been to conferences and you wrote down 3 or 4 things, you implemented them, and then you forgot about them and so on and so forth. So that's been our big thing is just how do you take whatever you want to see out of your managers, out of your company, and make it consistent every single day.
So this is like this, I'll also touch on this for a little bit, but this is this area that's like really exciting for me because we have been doing all this efficient stuff for company to rep, right? But where I feel like there's this like untapped huge potential is you take like a middle level manager who's player coach usually, like they're doing sales or they're doing service calls, like whatever. And lowering the ergonomics, like increasing the ergonomics of having a really data-driven, great conversation with someone that directly reports to that person.
Yeah.
I mean, example, in that first product, Web PDI, we built a thing where it builds a micro book report on every rep, in like 500 in half a second. It takes all the data about that rep, builds a micro book report, and then gives it to AI, to answer questions about that rep. So the manager has basically like a little coach that they can just look at and have a conversation with that rep in natural language, not a bajillion different reports to look at. Right.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's the type of thing I want to do. Like imagine if a manager could be driving along in the car and he could listen to an audio track that's like a little micro podcast about one of his direct reports. And he's like, this is what's going on. This is how many, calls they made, whatever their job is. And this is where they need improvement. And then you could just so easily have a conversation with a rep or a technician from that information. That's like what really excites me.
Yeah. No, I think it's all great stuff to be thinking about. And I think sometimes this stuff can get lost in the weeds when you're trying to perform every day and put numbers on the board and so on and so forth. But I think it's hugely important. The more that we can engage with our people, the more that we can, create that culture of growth and, development, we're going to see the results. You're probably not going to see them tomorrow, and probably not the next day, but it takes time and it develops over, just consistent action.
For sure.
So Stephen, I appreciate the time. We're bumping up on an hour here. Obviously I could talk about this stuff all day and I'm sure you could as well, because it's what we do, developing people. I guess for listeners, we talked a little bit about what you guys can do at Convey Your, if people are interested in learning more about kind of what you're talking about, how could you guys help? How's the best way to find you guys?
Yeah, the best way to find us is just go to our website. It's conveyyour.com. So CONVEY OUR. So convey and your with one Y. And just head up. And if you want to get learn more about Convey Your, click on the See demo, and there's a guide there that explains you can schedule a demo with our team. You can see one of these portals that I'm talking about and see how you can kind of get the drift of how we operate. There on the website. So just click on the See demo at the top.
Awesome stuff. Well, definitely, listeners, check that out. If you're well, you should be interested in recruiting and onboarding and the role it plays in the success of your company. But again, Stephen, I really appreciate the time. I've got a whole page of notes here of things that I'm going to take back and make sure that we're doing the best at, or maybe just put a little bit different spin on it. But really appreciate you being on. Again, listeners, I'm sure you got a lot out of this, and it's hugely important to me, and just really appreciate you sharing kind of some of your wisdom.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate the same.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to connect with me personally, you can find me at chadmpeterman.com. To see what our team's up to, you can visit petermanbros.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel and consider joining the CSTG Arena. As always, keep growing out there.